The first team, age 13. It happened on the next to last day of school. Karen Ehrenberg turned and gave me a sly smile. "Have you heard the scuttlebutt?" she asked. I made a face at her. "My mom's not having a baby," I told her. "True," she nodded, "but I heard something even more important." I tried not to care, but she had me hooked. Again. "About me?" I asked. She nodded. "What?" "You're moving," Karen said. "No way," I told her. She nodded. "Ask your parents." I wanted to believe she was lying, except for one thing. Karen was always right. The teacher was talking about active verbs and passive verbs, but I couldn't concentrate. Moving? After school, I jumped off the bus and ran into the house. "Are we moving?" I demanded. Mom looked guilty. "How did you—" she began. "Karen Ehrenberg," I interrupted. "Well, are we?" "Yes," Mom admitted. "I'm sorry you didn't hear from us first. We're moving to Chicago." "Chicago?" I'd seen the city on the map of the United States. "Why there?" "That's where the regional office for Dad's work is," Mom said. "He's getting a big promotion." After supper, I walked outside and sat on the boulder in the front yard. It was my favorite place, my thinking rock, but my head was still swirling and I couldn't think. Moving. I was glad my best friend, Andy Hunt, wasn't outside. I'd have to tell him, and I didn't want to say the awful word out loud. Dad always got home from work after we ate supper. Now he came outside and stood beside me. "I guess you heard the news?" "Yeah." I didn't look at him. "You okay?" I said nothing. "I remember when you were little. You used to play statue on this rock. You sure loved that game." He smiled, but in my head I pictured another kid, a stranger, sitting on my rock after I was gone to Chicago. Not a pretty picture. "Why do we have to move?" I demanded. "You've got a good job here, don't you?" "I do," Dad said. "But in my business, Boston is the second team. Chicago is where the real action is. All my life I've wanted to play on the first team, and now I've got the chance. I'm excited about that. Maybe someday you'll understand the feeling." Dad went into the house. I felt too agitated to go inside, so I started wandering down Acorn Street. The night air was warm and school was just about over, but the idea of summer left me cold. I stopped by another boulder, this one at the edge of Ailes Woods. When I was in first grade, my brother Jimmy found 3 long fluorescent bulbs someone had put out with the trash and smashed them against the granite boulder. Then we heard that fluorescent bulbs were filled with poisonous gas. After that, whenever we ran past the rock, we held our breath. I realized I was doing that now, 6 years later. I was still holding my breath. "All my life," Dad said, "I've wanted to play on the first team. And now I've got the chance." "What do you mean by that?" I had spent my whole life living on Acorn Street. This neighborhood felt like my bones, my skin. I thought of Ailes Woods and our woods, Mud Puppy Place. I thought of my 3 best friends, Andy Hunt, Steve Fishman, Larry Waters. I thought of Jimmy Dean, Ricky and Lee Topham, Timmy Ross, Freddie Black, Sophie and Arthur Pratt, and so many others. The first team. How could this not be the first team? Moving Days, page 165. Nobody was happy about moving, except maybe Mom and Dad and the little kids who didn't really have a clue what moving meant. "Chicago's not near the ocean," Lainey pointed out. Jimmy moaned. "No geography lesson, okay?" "No, but it's on Lake Michigan, which is huge," Dad said. "When you're on the lake, you can see the other side. It's like being on the ocean, except it's fresh water, not salt." "I don't want to move," Tommy said. He stuck out his lower lip and folded his arms across his chest. "Me neither," Jimmy agreed. "Are Stephen and Peepers coming with us?" "No," Mom said, shaking her head. "We'll find a good home for them here in Marshfield." "Am I gonna move?" Bobby asked, looking up at Mom. "No, you've got to stay here," Jimmy told him. Bobby's face fell. It looked like he was going to cry. "That was so mean," Lainey said, glaring at him. "So what?" Jimmy made a face at her. "Jimmy," Mom gave him a warning look. "Hey, I was just kidding," Jimmy replied, looking at Bobby. "Can't you take a joke?" Bobby nodded his head and tried to smile. "You're definitely coming with us," Mom said, rubbing the top of Bobby's head. "How could we go anywhere without you?" Mom and Dad stayed busy packing, but Jimmy made himself scarce. I got glimpses of him wandering through the woods alone or with his friend Ricky. Once I saw him near a stone wall, at a place where we often dug up colorful glass bottles among the trash that someone had buried long ago. We made our final trip to Wrexham Beach. Jimmy found a dead sand shark that had washed up on shore. He ran back to our blanket to get his pocket knife. The kids who gathered to watch squealed when they saw Jimmy cut open the shark's belly. He located the shark's stomach and sliced that open, too. One girl gagged and ran off. "You can see what he ate before he died," Jimmy said, showing us a bottle cap plus 2 small, partly digested fish. That night I listened to Jimmy breathing in his bed. Roaming around outside was what he loved best, and the idea of moving away from the woods must have been terrifying for him. But he didn't talk about it, so I could only guess. I worried about him. He still wasn't doing very well in school. Would things be different in Illinois? The next day I wanted to have one final game of war, and so I took it upon myself to organize a big one with all my brothers and friends and the neighborhood kids. My team had my brothers plus Andy, Steve, and Larry. It was our best war ever, and it ended with a bloody battle, everybody standing 20 feet away from each other, holding up their sticks and firing at point-blank range. Then the last kid fell, and the woods went quiet. I didn't want the game to end, so I lay there for a whole minute, letting imaginary smoke drift away in the breeze. Mom stood on a chair and wiped my fingerprints off the door jamb for the last time. She packed dozens and dozens of boxes, but for some reason I still found it hard to wrap my head around the word. Moving. I had lived in that house in Marshfield practically my whole life, and it never occurred to me that we might end up living anywhere else. I figured I had a lock on this place that I'd been here forever, or at least I grew up, and the way Karen Ehrenberg knew she would be sitting in the first seat, first row at school until she graduated from high school. Mom brought the electric clippers outside and gave each boy a wiffle haircut. I went last, and by then there were clumps of hair all over the porch. Mom always told us that birds would add our cut hair to twigs and grass to make their nests. That had sounded like a fairy tale, but now I wanted to believe that some part of me might live on in these woods after I was gone. "Nice haircuts," Dad said. I looked down at the table at Jimmy, Tommy, Bobby, Johnny, and Joey. Mom had cut our hair extra short. My brothers reminded me of the baby chicks when we first got them. I must have looked that way too. "Who wants another slice?" Mom asked. All the silverware had been packed away, so we were eating pizza on paper plates. Mrs. Pratt had brought over the pizza, a salad, some chips, and guacamole, which we hardly ever ate. "I do," Tommy said. "I don't," Kathy said. A 3-year-old, she spoke with a funny, high-pitched voice. "How's everybody doing?" Dad asked. If he didn't know, we were all feeling pretty glum. "Jimmy?" "One thing you never told me," Jimmy said. "Do they have any woods near our house?" "I don't know for sure," Dad said. "I saw lots of trees." "Trees aren't woods," Jimmy pointed out. "My friends won't be there," Lainey murmured. "Don't forget, all 10 of us will be moving." Jimmy leaned back and noisily cracked his knuckles. "Unfortunately," he sighed. "That's not a bad thing," Mom told him. "You'll be in a new neighborhood, but you'll already have 8 kids to play with." I never thought about it that way before. On the first day, we could play a game of war, me, Bobby, and Joey versus Jimmy, Tommy, and Johnny. It wouldn't be the same without Andy, Steve, and Larry. Not nearly, but I told myself it was better than nothing. "Who wants some guacamole?" Mom asked. "I do," Dad said. "Yuck," said Katie, pointing at the greenish goop. "You should try it," Mom said to her. "It's really good." "I don't want rock and Raleigh," Kathy cried, which cracked everybody up. We still didn't have a place for Stephen and Peepers. Finally, Mr. Waters, Larry's father, said they would come live with them. "We got hens but no roosters," he said, "so there shouldn't be any fighting like there was at the other place." It seemed like the perfect solution given the fact that there was no way Mom would let us bring the roosters to Illinois. Mr. Waters was a nice guy, and I just knew he wouldn't get rid of our roosters the first time they got into trouble. So we agreed. Mr. Waters came over with his pickup truck early one morning and took the roosters away. The next day, the whole family went over to Larry's house to check on them. The roosters ignored us, but it was hard to feel sad with Stephen and Peepers looking so happy in their new home. The birds strutted around like a couple of VIPs, heads high, chests out, surrounded by 4 dozen clucking hens. "They've always had a lot of attitude," Mom said, laughing. "That's a good thing for a rooster to have," Mr. Waters replied. "We're going to move, but they moved first," Bobby whispered. "We won't be able to check on them when they're in Illinois," Lainey said sadly. "Don't worry," said Dad. "Look at the nice big yard they've got to play in." "And there's a snug hen house for cold nights," Mr. Waters said. "Believe me, your roosters get made in the shade." I nodded. I believed that Stephen and Peepers would be fine in their new home. I just wished I could be there at the same time. I wish I could be sure that the same would be true for me.